Mom, let my sister study. I will sacrifice for us. For our family, I will give up my education and marry Ethan. My twin sister Emily was on her knees in the dirt, eyes serious, voice sincere. I saw my parents tearing as they were really touched by her words. My family stood on the brink of bankruptcy, and only the richest in the city, the Carter family, offered to help. They only agreed to help if we married our families. However, it was common knowledge that Ethan Carter, the eldest son of the Carter family, had been in a coma for the last half a year from that car accident. He was a death sentence to a full life, if marrying him meant spending that life as a living widow. In my previous life, Emily, suppressing a desire to marry Ethan, devised a strategy on the day our family was about to draw lots to see who would become the bride. She had covertly bribed a servant to prepare 2 identical slips and then generously allowed me to draw first. The outcome was obvious, but she never could have imagined that less than a month after I'd married into the Carter family, Ethan would have miraculously awakened. Everyone was jealous of my luck, and the Carter family thanked me for his recovery. My parents were elated, but Emily was furious enough for her eyes to turn red with jealousy. In rage, she took a rich man as a husband, who quickly turned out to deceive her. I discovered her alleged rich husband was actually a con man. Not only did she scam out of thousands of dollars and love, he beat her repeatedly after they were married. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. She had believed I had taken it upon myself to steal away her title as the Carter family daughter-in-law. So, after one especially savage beating that almost killed her, she entered a vehicle and ran over me. Then I opened my eyes and I was back in history, back to the same day when our family went bankrupt. This time, Emily didn't even wait for our parents to draw lots. She immediately offered to give up her own life to save him. In that moment, I could tell she had also been reborn. I watched her on her knees on the floor. She isn't doing it, no matter how hard she tries. Her eyes can't hide her excitement. She believed that marrying Ethan would afford her the high life, glory for herself just as I had had in a previous life.
Fool.
She had no reason to know what I had been through in the Carter family. She didn't know just how twisted and terrifying those people truly were. Emily, are you sure? My mother hesitated, torn. You know, Ethan has remained in a vegetative state. Both of you are my daughters. Of course, Emily said with conviction, and I'm only going to a third-rate university anyway. But my sister goes to a fancy Ivy League school. It is unfair to expect her to drop out for marriage. Emily had always been a bad student. It was only by attending that third-rate uni I even had ever a frightful chance in hell anyway, thanks to the dollars my parents spent. So now, after hearing her, my parents thought she had grown up one day and made the right choice. They nodded in approval. Since you are so willing, we will comply with your request, my father said. Emily, no way is this going to be simple, but this is your decision. Emily finally burst with joy when she heard our parents agree. She smiled victoriously and then also gave me a suggestive look. I feigned confusion and acted overly thankful to her instead. And after all, she was about to endure the living hell I had endured. It was settled that Emily was going to marry Ethan, and her arrogance grew. She had never as a child been as favored by our parents as I was. But that was her fault. She didn't listen to them, loathed studying, and began dating boys in middle school. She got in trouble so frequently that our parents were called in to the school repeatedly. She even ran away with a boy. Later she demanded to marry a pretend rich guy named Ryan. Our parents did not approve, but she would not hear of it. After she got married, she would come back asking them to give her money to help Ryan, almost cleaning out our family saving. Sick of being disappointed, our parents eventually wrote her off altogether. In my former life, Emily first approached me for money after she had been rejected for monetary support from them. Of course, I refused. First of all, I had already seen through the dude. He was a fake, a money digger using women for money. Second, though I appeared to leave a glamorous life with the Carter family, I never had any access to their wealth. But Emily wouldn't believe me. She thought I was just being petty and had a plan to withhold help from her. With Emily now the family hero, she was relishing the glory, triumphantly. In a daze, She thought that I was about to be the well-known daughter-in-law of the Carter family, so she wanted to vent the grievances she had suffered in her past life. "I want an apple," she suddenly declared, her voice loud and authoritative. I called for the housekeeper. "Peel it for me," Emily snapped. I looked at her. She looked at me with an air of entitlement. "I married a Comatose man, so you don't have to suffer. I deserve better than this, don't you think?" I picked up a fruit knife without saying a word and peeled a Honeycrisp apple for her. She wasn't wrong. She had, indeed, taken my place in that damned nightmare. And her days of good fortune were over. I might as well be generous. As soon as I was done peeling, I passed her the apple. Emily took a look at it, and her face turned sour. "Yo, giving me an entire apple? How am I supposed to eat it? Are you choking me to death?" She sneered. "I want it cut into pieces." I said nothing and quietly cut the apple into bite-sized pieces. "Feed me," she ordered next. I took a tiny fork and popped a morsel into her mouth. The second she took a bite, she rejected it, straight on my face. Before I could speak up, she instantly played the victim. "Mom, my sister deliberately gave me a rotten apple. Is she trying to kill me?" she wailed. I rolled my eyes. Just as her performance ended, our parents came home from work. Surely, however, they had been overindulgent to Emily lately, quite unlike their pre-evacuation selves. They were basically succumbing to her every desire. "Your sister wouldn't do that on purpose." Mom attempted to comfort her. "I'll buy you a fresh one. You've always taken her side. You always favored her since we were little. Now, after all the sacrifice I made for this family, you still are biased." Emily shouted in frustration. "You are both my daughters. How could I ever be biased toward one or the other? If I've been harder on you, it's only because I want the best for you," Mom explained, patiently. "I don't care. She served me up a bad apple, so she owes me one. What would you like her to do to make it up to you?" Dad asked with a sigh. "I want the Chanel bag, the one that's just $13,000, she declared. I heard Mom draw in a quick breath. Our family business still had not recovered, and spending that much money now is equivalent to stabbing a knife in their hearts. Emily wouldn't budge, and they were trying to convince her. Finally, they buckled, grinding their molars as they consented. Emily smiled proudly. When our parents went away, she deliberately faced me and said, "Sister, don't be jealous, okay?" I smirked. "Jealous? No. I'm merely watching you burying yourself, one shovel full at a time." But from that point on, Emily only became more unbearable. She asked for anything she wished for and refused to consider that we were a poor family. Food, clothing, luxury goods, she wanted only the best of everything. I have watched as their newfound fondness for her slowly eroded, one crumb at a time. But Emily didn't care. She was convinced that once she was married into the Carter family, she would be unstoppable and all-powerful. It felt like soon this would even trickle down to our parents being dependent on her. She was still wary of me despite her arrogance. That was clear when she intentionally introduced me to Ryan. In this life, Emily not only wanted to plunder my wealth, but also wanted me to follow her miserable path. Transference. She wanted me to carry all the pain she had suffered gross. All she could think about was plotting and men, as if she was completely incapable of taking her second chance to become a better person and to improve her circumstances and future. I told you, if she is reborn 100 times, she will be a stupid person for 100 times. As you can imagine, I declined her little act of kindness. Emily instantly made a scene in front of our parents, sobbing and yelling about how I embarrassed her in front of her friends. She said they should have made me apologize to Ryan by now. My parents were fed up with her antics. They had been putting up with her, due to the sham sacrifice she made for the family, but they were running on fumes. But Emily only became bolder, insisting that they choose her side. I had reached my limit. There was silence in a previously bustling living room. If marrying Ethan is such a big sacrifice, then I guess I will do it for Emily. I spoke clearly, in a loud voice. I'm the older sister. I have to bear this responsibility. The color drained from Emily's face. She was shaken, visibly, and clearly had never expected to hear such words coming out of my mouth. She believed that by marrying Ethan, she could turn it against me, but I'd turned it against her. Even my parents fell silent. It was clear that they had lost patience with Emily's antics. Mom, Dad, go home and tell the Carter family that I will marry Ethan. All they want at the end of the day is a daughter-in-law. It doesn't matter who it is. My tone was steady, not up for debate. Emily stumbled and begged to be heard first. No, you don't have to. I'll marry him. I don't want to suffer my sister. She sounded sincere, but I knew better. I maintained a calm tone and said the deliberate words, because my sister has shown to sacrifice for the family. I will. I knew Emily would never allow me to take her place. She wanted to marry Ethan so badly that she was going bonkers over it. It's my choice. I want to do this. Sister, don't mess with me about it. Emily insisted anxiously. It certainly doesn't feel like a sacrifice to me. I'm proud to help support our family. Panic flicked across her face, and I watched. She was terrified I was actually going to do it. You really don't think of it as a sacrifice? I asked. Not at all, she responded immediately. Well, then you better stop bringing up how much you've sacrificed for this family, I said gingerly. The repetition imposes an unnecessary weight on us. I won't say it again. Emily promised instantly. Finally, she quieted down. She no longer thought she had the right to use her so-called sacrifice as an excuse to have whatever she wanted. My own parents also had a look of relief, as they finally had a house free of relative chaos day in and out. Finally, the day arrived when Emily received what she wanted. She married Ethan. Sister, from today on, you'll have nothing but envy for me for the rest of your life. She leaned in close as she was about to leave for the Carter family and smugly whispered to me. I smiled and said to myself, good job, Emily. You just entered the void. Evade the Carter family, as much as they do. Ethan was the one who missing at the spent a fortune planning a wedding. Emily had been jealous to the point of insanity in my former life. All her life, she had been lazy and unmotivated, never getting anywhere. But she couldn't bear seeing me succeed, either. She had come to my wedding with a face as dark as the night. Tougaloo had been the only thing that comforted her then, the knowledge that Ethan lay in a coma, and leaving her feeling, more or less, justified in her resentment. But this time it was her turn. I could tell that she was begrudgingly suppressing her excitement. The ceremony went forward as scheduled. Because Ethan wasn't there, his little brother, Nathan Carter, walked with a framed picture of him to perform the rituals on his behalf. As soon as I laid eyes on Nathan, my body quaked. Memories flooded my mind, memories of him fucking with me, whipping me, making me crawl on the floor like a dog. Paige, what's wrong? The sound of my mother's worried voice brought me back to the real world. She had noticed my pale face. I quickly lowered my head. Nothing, I murmured. But below the table, my fists were clenched so tightly that my nails pierced my palms. Mom didn't press further. The ceremony had begun, and everyone's focus was on Emily and Nathan. I fought to quell the nauseating fear bubbling in my chest and noticed Nathan's eyes settling on Emily. He smiled, slowly, measuredly, a little tight with pleasure. I recognized that smile all too well. It was the smile of a hunter. Emily Adams, will you have Ethan Carter to be your lawfully wedded husband? Do I, Emily said emphatically. If Ethan never wakes up, he will still be my one true love forever, in my mind. When you marry, you are cementing a bond until death, not to be thrown away. A thundering round of applause erupted in the hall. Many guests who had once spoke behind her back about her greed and opportunism were now touched by her alleged sincerity. At first, people had doubted, whispering behind Emily's back, speculating money must have blinded Emma to her own husband's vegetative state. But having listened to her vows, they were sure she must really love Ethan. Emily was puffing up with pride, drinking in the praise and approval. She was so wrapped up in her own pleasure that she completely overlooked the way Nathan's withering smirk deepened into something much more malevolent. After the ceremony, she jubilantly trailed behind the Carter family as they left the venue, practically beaming with happiness. I watched her face, thrilled and also nerving up. All I could do was wish her well, silently. I got a message from Emily on the way back home. She needed me to be someone who resented and envied her. So all day, she was trying to egg me on. When she realized I still didn't care, she finally lost it. Paige, do you know how well the Carter family treats me? Not that I blame them for going all out for this wedding, but did you catch Nathan? Both times, it was because of an incredibly wealthy heir who catered to me the whole time. By the way, I saw you keep staring at him. Do you have feelings for him? You should know your place. He respects me, but our family status is nothing compared to theirs. Don't embarrass yourself thinking you could have a chance with him. I just joined the Carter family, so don't embarrass me. I roll my eyes and set down my phone. So Emily was afraid I'd want to seduce Nathan, afraid I'd follow her into the Carter family and take her so-called fortune and glory for my own. How ridiculous. If I recalled correctly, it would be Nathan tonight who is consummating the marriage with Emily and Ethan's stead, on the very bed Ethan usually used. And the more that Emily pleaded for mercy, the more aroused Nathan became. Tonight would be a veritable waking nightmare. But none of that was about me. What was important to me now was restoring our family business. Because I knew that once those two brothers were finished having fun with Emily, they'd toss her aside without a second thought. I never personally lived to see that day in my former life. Emily, she'd killed me long before that. This time, I wouldn't only plan for the worst. That blood would be repaid with blood. No one who had ever wronged me would be free from vengeance. Traditionally, the bride would return to her father's house on the day after the wedding. Emily returned alone, since Ethan remained in a coma. I sensed something was wrong the moment she walked in. Her skin was shockingly pale, her walk even strange. She looked at me with pure hatred and was about to rip me apart. Playing not to notice, I greeted her and our parents as if we were all delighted to see each other. Naturally, Emily didn't utter a word about what had happened. This was her own choice she had made. She wouldn't humiliate herself by confessing what she'd been through that early. After all, on a month when Ethan miraculously woke up, she would be able to break free from Nathan's onslaught and return to the wealth and delight of the Carter family. But little did she know, Ethan was much worse than Nathan. Emily stayed at home all day, unwilling to go elsewhere. It was only when Nathan himself came to collect her that she finally had no option. From the moment Nathan entered our home, I watched the color leave Emily's face. Our parents, though, were thrilled and embraced him extravagantly, as one does outsiders. The Carter brothers, Nathan and Ethan, had always been exemplary men with perfect manners and spotless stripes. Elders everywhere respected and loved them. Nathan spoke politely. "Mrs. Adams, don't worry about it. I'm here for my parents to take my sister-in-law home. It's getting late, and they were concerned she wouldn't come home alone." My father beamed. "Emily is treated so well by the Carter family. We're truly grateful." Emily stood frozen, silent. Nathan smiled at our mother. "Now that Emily is married to my brother, she's one of us. But don't worry, we're all going to take such great care of her. You'll have to watch her," Mom said sincerely. Nathan nodded, and he turned to Emily. "Sister-in-law, let's go." Emily's face turned even whiter, and I could see her body shaking uncontrollably. And then, somehow trying for a way out, she turned to me and introduced me to Nathan impulsively. "This is my twin sister, Paige. She's very well educated, a great shape, a beautiful woman." Nathan looked over at me with his wide eyes. With a polite nod, he said, "Nice to meet you." I replied with a nonchalant, uninterested okay. Emily looked as if she didn't finish her thought, but I cut her short. "Emily, you wanted Nathan here in person to pick you up, and he did. Don't keep him waiting. You should head back now." Our parents pushed for her to go, too. She puffed up her lizard neck, glared at me hate-filled, and wandered off. But I knew exactly what she was up to. Indeed, soon enough I had a message from her. "Don't say your little sister never did you any favors. Now that I am married to a wealthy family, one wouldn't just drop you all. Which is why I had you meet Nathan today. You saw how popular he is. If you think he might be interested, I don't mind arranging something." Consider it my gift to you. I replied curtly, no. Thanks. I'm not fortunate enough for that kind of fate. You should enjoy it yourself. Emily was trying to make me a scapegoat so she could get away from Nathan. What a joke. Not only would I never fall for her trick, I knew something she didn't. Nathan had a perverse obsession. He was only attracted to women who had slept with his brother. Other women had little allure for him. Emily was still messaging me, going on about how great Nathan was. I ignored all of them. I had better things to do. In addition, I had begun to assist my parents with the running of the company. That was when I finally realized why the company had struggled so hard for so long in my previous life. It was a fundamentally broken business model. It was leaning too much on offline sales from before its acquisition. At the time, it left me entirely at the mercy of the Carter family. This time around, I came in and made a series of changes immediately. I made it one of the first online live stream sales companies. And at that time, live streaming was not as popular, so I used attractive hosts and handsome men and beautiful women to attract customers. As competition became tougher between my guests, I took to the mic myself, holding bilingual live streams in which I discussed poetry and travel. It was this differentiating focus that helped me make my mark, and before long, I was leading a very prosperous, fast-paced company. Sadly, 6 months went by in a flash. Ethan had long since been awake by then. As in my old life, his miraculous recovery was all because of Emily. The Carter family lavished her with endless praise and over-the-top gifts, jewelry, designer handbags, luxury items worth a small fortune. They made her feel like a princess, doting on her to the extent of insanity. People everywhere admired her, and she was only too glad to bask in their envy. And the instant Ethan opened his eyes, she bolted home, desperate to share the news. The Carter family continues to call me their lucky star, she boasted. They tell me that, but for me, Ethan wouldn't have woken up as quickly. Initially, I was worried that I wouldn't appeal to him as our marriage was forced. I thought he might resent me. But you know what? It was love at first sight the moment he opened his eyes. She smiled smugly. Sister, that's why it pays to be kind. And as it turns out, I was rewarded with an amazing life because I was willing to give it everything I had in service to our family. I remained quiet, saying nothing. Noticing that I wasn't acting jealous, she scoffed. What's the matter, Paige? I can't stand seeing me happy. Now that I'm finally here, you're purposely giving me the cold shoulder? You're just selfish. You could not sacrifice yourself, and now you cannot abide to see me doing well. I rolled my eyes and stood up to walk away. I actually wasn't even meant to be home today, but our parents had insisted that I was there to welcome Emily back. I had only stayed to spare them the trouble. Don't ever come crawling back to me for help, Paige, she said roughly, looking daggers at me. You know where I am in the Carter family hierarchy now. You know how rich they are. If you ever get in trouble, I would suggest you not ask me for anything. Okay, I said nonchalantly. Then I turned to her, and I said, and don't come to me for help either. Emily gave a dramatic laugh, as if she'd just been told the silliest thing in the world. Sister, do you not understand who I am now and who you are? Do you honestly believe I would ever have to come to you for help? She smirked. Fine, it's a deal. I was too busy to waste another word on her. Since you've gotten this far, let's just put all the cards on the table. Emily, I said, narrowing my eyes at her. Lay what out? She said, pretending to be morally superior. Emily crossed her arms, sounding self-righteous. I'm pretty privileged now, and I really wanted to help you. Let's be honest. Our family would never be as wealthy as the Carter family, at least not in several lifetimes. And you're my only sister, so I wanted to have a better future for you. That is why I introduced you to Nathan. Yet despite my kindness, you're responding with sarcasm and hostility. Since it has come to this, let's hash it out right here in front of Mom and Dad. Moving forward, don't come to me for help, no matter what happens to you. The same goes for you. I am not going to ask anything from you. And one more thing. You are not permitted to be near Ethan. He's my husband. All that is his is mine. I chuckled. In that instance, I finally grasped what it really was that mattered to her. Emily was not trying to help me. She was terrified that all of a sudden, Ethan would like me instead. In a former life, as far as outsiders knew, Ethan had treated me like a queen. She feared that history would be repeated. At the moment, though, Ethan had just woken up. He had just been in a coma for so long, and he was still adjusting. She didn't know what kind of monster he really was. All she really knew was that until now, he hadn't put up any resistance to her. Of course, he hadn't. Who could resist prey that practically gifted itself at your doorstep? They can point to you and say, "Paige, you wouldn't be this brazen, would you? Stealing your own sister's husband?" When I didn't instantly agree to anything, Emily got flustered. Her ridiculous reasoning made me laugh. "You are the disgusting one, Emily," I countered. She glared at me. "You're sick. Only a sick person would assume others feel like they do," I retorted icily. I was never interested in Ethan. May you and he spend your lives together, if nothing else. "Then swear it," she demanded. "You swear you have no inappropriate thoughts about Ethan. If you are lying, you would feel a painful death approach." I sneered. "What reason do I have to swear anything for you?" "If you don't testify under oath," she alleged, "it means you are guilty. You truly believe the whole world is as shameless and pathetic as you?" "Unlike you, I have morals," I said curtly. "Unlike you, I don't have this perverted view of right and wrong." "That's enough, Paige." Emily's voice broke with exasperation. Our parents, hearing us argue, jumped to mediate. "Why are you two fighting? Emily just got back home. Can't you both stop?" Emily's gaze was electric with rage. "She's not my sister anymore. If you try to put a stop to me, then I'll abandon you too." Emily, our mother, gasped in shock. "All of you should remember that our family business is only alive because of the Carter family, because of me." Emily's words were cutting and cruel, and they left our parents with smiles frozen on their faces, looking humiliated. As much as they hated to admit it, she wasn't wrong. The company called on the support of the Carter family to keep it going. But selling their daughter to survive wasn't exactly a point of pride. It had been said in whispers behind their backs for long enough. Even our parents were not completely unfazed by the shame of it all. But for the sake of the business, they had no option but to try to weather the storm. And then there was Grandpa, still in a hospital bed. With no financial backing, they would be unable to afford his costly treatments. If he did, they wouldn't have a choice but to watch him die. So, in my past life, I had willingly chose to die. I had done it for my family. But that sacrifice for Emily had become her ticket to do whatever she wanted, her bargaining chip that gave her complete power over the family. "I'm not going to get Mom and Dad involved. I don't want them to feel stuck in the middle," I said gently. At this point, I have not fully pinned down the company's success yet. It makes up for a lot of the Carter dynasty I needed time to eclipse. I held her gaze and said firmly, "Fine. So, if you want to sever connections, then fine. We have nothing to do with each other from now on. Then, no matter what happens to either of us, we stay out of it. If either of us violates this agreement, let us be struck by lightning." "I would agree," she replied without hesitation. Emily broke into a triumphant smile. Today, she got all there was to want. She had already ensured that I would have no link to Ethan. Second, she had cut off my service, because now she could have her fortune to herself and didn't have to pay her debts to me. I suddenly felt curious. How ugly would she be on the day when she finally hated all this? And so time passed. Emily never came back home. Yet her name was all over the news. Hitchcock and of Ethan Carter him. His loyal wife, Emily, never leaves his side. Ethan Carter showers his beloved wife, Emily, with extravagant shopping sprees, buying things for their home and for her, just to make her smile. You wake up to find the billion-dollar mansion of Ethan Carter, who throws Emily a birthday party that lasts all day, every day. My hands curling involuntarily into fists, I sat in my office. Because I almost died in that beachfront mansion in my last life. And those so-called day and night celebrations, they were just what they sounded like. Ethan and Emily paraded their love around for 6 months, attracting tabloid headlines with their perfect couple photo. After putting in some overtime, I finally went home tonight. But the moment I walked through the door, I could tell something wasn't right. In the parlor of my family Emily's living room sat Ethan Carter. My parents were throwing him, the honored guest, all the warmth and hospitality I could imagine. Next to him was Emily, so neat and so obedient in a way I had not seen before. Her expression had seemed worried, even cowardly, as if terrified of taking the wrong step. This was not the first time Ethan had visited our home, but I had taken care never to cross paths with him. Except this time, nobody had given me a heads up. Nobody told me if Ethan was here. As soon as my mother saw me, she called me over. "Paige, come here. This is Ethan. You've never even met him, and your sister has been married to him forever. Get to know each other." I turned my eyes on Ethan, who looked at me with keen interest. He spoke slowly, with a smirk on his lips. "Big sister sure is busy. Whenever I come around, they tell me you're on overtime. How's your company doing? Is there anything you need us to do on behalf of the Carter family?" His voice was airy, a little mocking. "You don't have to hustle yourself to death to earn money. I even understand you became a live streamer, bringing cheer to people on the job. That must be tough." Catching sight of his gross, plastic-like smile once more made me want to rip him to shreds. Just remembering everything I had endured in my past life because of him made my blood boil. But I maintained a calm expression and said with a slight smile, "I'm managing just fine. Some things I cannot depend on others to provide." "Take it easy on yourself," Ethan generously suggested. "We're family now. If you need anything, feel free to let me know." "Noted," I said dismissively. I had zero desire to continue this absurd exchange. "I have work to do still, so I'll go upstairs first. You all enjoy your chat." Not sparing him another glance, I walked out. Just seeing him made me sick. Once I shut out the world in my study, I wrote, oblivious to everything else, until I heard shouting from the next room. "I want a divorce. I never want to return to that house." Emily was crying uncontrollably. "You're being childish." My mother's voice held disapproval. "Every couple fights. But that doesn't mean you just bolt. Ethan has been so good to you. Stop talking nonsense. He's not good to me at all." "I hate him. He's a total psychopath," Emily wailed. "Enough." My mom snapped, losing her patience obviously. "You've always been a whirling dervish and dramatic. I don't believe a single thing you say. Ethan has showered you for months. What would suddenly make him start to mistreat you?" Then I heard a door open and close. My mother had left. I whispered a small laugh, as I felt just a little satisfaction. No sooner had I attempted to concentrate on my work than my study door swung wide open. Emily burst in with red eyes full of fury. She caught my smirk that I barely kept in check and glared back at me with unabashed hatred. "Oh, Paige, you did this on purpose, huh?" she hissed. "You knew this whole time, didn't you?" I feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're referring to. You knew Ethan was a bad person, but you still let me marry him. How could you be so cruel?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. I feigned surprise, raising my brows. "Ethan's not good to you, but hasn't he been good to you? Buying you jewelry, luxury cars, mansions? Everyone envies you. What else do you even want?" "You're mocking me," she screamed, her voice hoarse with rage. I smiled. "How am I mocking you? I'm sincerely happy for you." I tilted my head and added, "Wasn't it you who told me not to look at Ethan? You will never ask me for anything. I will never ask you for anything. That's what you wanted, correct?" I said with a weak sigh, pretending to feel bad. "So I suppose I must keep my distance from you." Emily tensed fully, mask contorting with unshed anger, her eyes welling with tears as if she would break at any moment. As she was about to complain again, a voice emerged from outside. "Emily, where are you? Let's go home." Ethan's voice. I watched Emily shake violently from head to toe. The fear she had for him went deeper than that. It ran deep, bone deep. So no matter how she tried, she couldn't stop it. Moments later, Ethan showed up in my study. He had hoisted Emily into his arms and spoke with a casual possessiveness. "Baby, let's go." Within, Emily's face went as white as a sheet. My sweetheart gave me a poisonous glare, but She didn't even have the courage to resist in front of Ethan. She knew the more she fought it, the worse it would get. Once they left, I never thought of them again. Not, at least, until one night when Emily decided to call me out of the blue. "Come get me," she slurred to Paige over the phone. "I drank too much. I can't go home." I nearly laughed out loud. Did she think I was as dumb as she was during my previous life? I rejected her instantly. "Emily, don't forget. We're no longer sisters. I don't ask anything from you, and you don't ask anything from me. That was your decision." "P, do you want me dead?" She suddenly screamed, and her voice was torn to pieces and made into a hysterical wail. I ignored her and hung up. Then, that evening, the media said Emily had been taken to the emergency room in the middle of the night. Ethan responded to the reporters directly and downplayed it with a smile. Emily just seemed to have overeaten and her tummy was upset. I brought her to the hospital just to be safe. The following day, social media overflowed with tributes to Ethan, loving spouse, romantic hero. No one questioned him. I knew that it was all an act, naturally, but it had nothing to do with me, so I never did think about it. Little did I know that shortly after, my live stream business would come under a barrage of malicious attacks. My business had always had overwhelmingly positive reviews up until then for as long as I had been streaming. But within seconds, my chat was filled with accusations. My products were faulty. People said that they had gotten food poisoning from the spicy noodles I sold. My name was smeared all over social media. I was called a scammer. My sales plummeted overnight. Every day, trolls invaded my live stream, calling me a fraud. I realized that this was no coincidence. Sure enough, my phone rang. It was Emily. "Paige," she said smugly. "Did you really think you could single-handedly save your little company? You're nothing against the Carter family." My hands shook with rage as I clutched my phone. I had known all along who was responsible for this, and I knew precisely what they wanted. "Ethan's birthday is tonight. He was celebrating at the Harbor Club. You'd better be there. Otherwise, the Addams family's too broke to pay the rent." With that, she hung up. I clenched my phone so hard my knuckles went white. Old me, before Ethan, when he'd make me his punching baggie, never once thought about taking others down with me. But Emily, she couldn't handle watching me excel, and she couldn't handle her own being suffering more than mine. That night, I went. As soon as I walked through the front door, Emily is on her knees on the floor pouring wine for Ethan like a fucking servant. She was as submissive as one can be. Nothing like the glamorized persona she showed the world. The elegant private room was a shambles. Other than Ethan and Nathan, there were a few of their equally twisted friends and their so-called dates. Ethan kicked back casually, propping his foot against her back, treating her like a stool. She did not have the courage to move, and she did not have the courage to resist. "Not so arrogant now, are you?" Ethan smirked lusciously. "Now you realize that with one finger I can ruin you and your whole family." I moved closer and spoke, my voice sharp as a knife. "So you're the one who gave me all those bad reviews on my live stream store." Ethan didn't even try to deny it. He simply chuckled. "Just a little trick." "What's wrong?" "Upset." "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. Ethan abruptly kicked Emily to the side instead of answering. She slammed against the table beside us, catching the edge hard, but did not cry out. She hadn't the assurance to complain. Ethan rose slowly and approached me. He reached out, lifted my chin between his fingers. "Borwers." "You tell me," Paige said Ethan. Just hearing him say that name almost lost me control. Before I could stop myself, I swung my hand and slapped him loudly across the face. I know every time he called me Paige like that it meant he was telling the truth, but it was always when he was at the most twisted point of the thing. "Your sister was funny for maybe 6 months, but she got stale fast," Ethan taunted, his voice oozing cruelty. "Yeah, but you're the one I think about." Enough. I pulled back, creating as much space between us as I could. All Ethan did was chuckle, undeterred by my reaction. "Don't pretend, Paige. You and I know what the truth is." He dropped his voice a bit and smirked. "You think I don't know? We're the same." He didn't use the words reborn, but I understood precisely what he was saying. He wasn't only implying it, he was affirming it. I had a feeling when I first looked at him. His gaze had a glint of knowledge, the same sort of look that I gave him when I figured out I traveled back in time. "You know what I can do," Ethan said smoothly. "Be a good girl and listen. Or else, wake up tomorrow morning to the news of your family's business going bankrupt." Ethan had used threats like these to keep me in line back in my past life. "Come on, have a little fun with us," he said lazily. He most certainly did not want to spend much time convincing me. He thought a few words would force me to submit. I let out a cold laugh. Without thinking, I turned and headed for the door. Ethan's expression darkened. He yanked my arm and pushed me down onto the couch. "A drink is offered. You refuse, but you want to drink the hard way? Fine then." I watched several men come walking my way. Out of the side of my vision, I saw Emily smirk, a distorted, smug half-grin on her face. She was almost gleeful, hoping to see me come to a worse end than she had. And then the door slammed with a bang. A cadre of police officers barged in. "Everyone stand up." The room erupted into chaos. Everyone rushed to collect their clothing, but Ethan barely reacted. He sauntered towards the officers, oozing arrogance. "Do you even know who I am?" he asked, his voice steady but dangerous. "I don't care who you are," one officer said sternly. "We started receiving information about illegal activities taking place here. You are all going with us for questioning." Ethan's smirk wavered a little. "You must be joking. I am Ethan Carter, the oldest son of the Carter family. Are you out of your minds?" "Handcuff them all," the officer said. Ethan started to rage, yelling curse words loudly and punching one of the officers. Add an officer assaulting to tackle to his charges. The officer growled before grabbing Ethan and flinging him down to the floor in a horrific takedown. Ethan let out a cry of pain. "Let me go. You'll all regret this." He had no clue that all of this was being streamed live. I learned my lesson this time. In a previous life, I had hidden a video of Ethan's crimes. I had brought it to the authorities, and it had been buried and ignored. Ultimately, Ethan got his revenge on me tenfold. This time, I would be no fool. Literally, before I got here this evening, I had expected it all. I had worn a secret mini camera and had the IT department at my company stream it all live. Now, the whole country had witnessed the truth. Ethan Carter was finished. Under unassailable evidence and public pressure, Ethan received a 5-year prison sentence. Nathan Carter was sentenced to 3 years. As for their so-called friends, they were each sentenced to different terms depending on their crimes. Emily, naturally, was never charged. She was seen as a victim. Once Ethan was sentenced, I visited him in prison. The shaved head was new, and his prison garb, but the same unrepentant bravado was still there. "Paige," he said with confidence as he settled back against a chair as though he still held power. "You honestly think this is the end? 5 years will go by in a flash, and when I get out, I will make you wish you were dead." A slow, amused laugh escaped me. I hadn't come here as an act of charity. I had come here to bring him some good news. I set a pile of the latest news articles in front of Ethan, allowing him to read the headlines one by one. Stocks tumble as Carter Corporation in high-profile scandal. Value of the company cut by 2/3 in only half a year. Ethan's face darkened, but that didn't completely unnerve him yet. I continued, my voice steady. "Your father, the chairman of the Carter Corporation, has been arrested on charges of corruption, bribery, and tax evasion. He was put in administrative detention a week ago." I noticed panic flicker in Ethan's face for the first time. I didn't stop there. "And your mother, who had endured one financial and legal setback after another, had a sudden brain hemorrhage. She was taken to the hospital. Her current condition is unclear." Ethan's jaw tightened, his whole body drew together tight, as he looked like he was just holding himself together. With a smile, I dealt the finishing blow. "And, just today, even more breaking news. The last of Carter Corporation's liquid assets ran off with your father's secretary, you know, his little mistress. Now the business is but an empty shell on the verge of bankruptcy." I leaned forward a bit, watching his face drain pale. "So, what is it like to lose it all?" Ethan finally snapped. His voice broke as he bellowed. "Impossible. You're lying." his bloodshot eyes fixed on mine as though pleading. The Carter family is too big to go broke overnight. Generational wealth is abundant for us. I raised my head, pretending to be interested. You had enough wealth. If you hadn't been a reckless fool with Nathan, then maybe things would be different. But now it's you to blame. Shut up. Shut the hell up. Ethan banged the table, his face twisted in fury. Paige, I'm going to kill you, I swear, when I get out of here. One of the prison guards quickly slammed his head down into the cold metal table, holding him there. His skin pulsed with the strain of disconnected veins, but he was entirely helpless. I watched him writhe and felt nothing but satisfaction. I leaned in and whispered in his ear, "And only if you live long enough to leave." His breath hitched. "What do you mean?" "Just what it sounds like," I said with a cool smile before I stood up. Just as I was turning to leave the door, I turned back and said, "Oh, I almost forgot. The new billionaire rankings just came out last week. Now Adams Corporation is on top on the list." Ethan's face contorted in disbelief. His eyes went bloodshot as he fought furiously against the guards, but it was no use. As I was leaving, I heard the guard yelling at him, "Stay still." The next thing I heard was Ethan's hoarse, desperate voice. "Stop. Don't hit me. I won't move." What a way to shape your life, Ethan Carter had never once thought. The thrill of revenge? Nothing could compare. Arriving back from visiting the prison, I was met by the sound of that familiar, irritating voice. Emily. She still had the nerve to show her face after all this. After Ethan was arrested, Emily never left the Carter family. When the news broke of the scandal, my parents had implored her to leave him. It was anxiety no matter what. She was still their daughter, and they didn't want her to be dragged down with him. But Emily refused. She was sure that with Ethan and Nathan behind bars, she would finally have a life of luxury in the Carter household. She thought that with a fortune this size, she would never again have to worry about money. My parents had scolded her in frustration, but she didn't take it well, throwing a tantrum and accusing them of being jealous of her success and vowing to cut off relations with them. She became convinced, at the time, that without the Carter family's financial underwriting, we were headed for bankruptcy in short order. She'd even pulled away from us, for fear of being dragged down when the Carters eventually came for me, seeking revenge. But reality has a way of flipping the script. A few months later, the bankrupt one was the Carter family. And now there she was, pious and utterly shameless, crawling back. She absolutely lit up when she saw me and greeted cheerfully, "Sister." I stared at her blankly. "Don't call me that. We cut ties, remember?" Emily didn't even flinch. She approached me with a huge smile. "Oh, but that was in the past. You wouldn't really bear a grudge over a silly misunderstanding, would you?" It had the sickeningly sweet tone she used when she was trying to squirm her way out of trouble. Of course, we decided to stay clear of each other's lives, unless, we wanted to get struck by lightning. You have little fear of breaking that promise, but I'd leak this time. Emily's face went stiff, but she quickly willed a sugary smile. "Paige," she stretched out my name like she was trying to be sweet. I cut her off. "Also, we're the same age. I was only 15 minutes old than you. Then stop acting like the younger sibling. It doesn't work on me. It's making me feel nauseated, if anything." Emily turned red with embarrassment. "Maria, escort her out," I said. I added before my housekeeper could weigh in. "From this day forth, if anyone comes knocking that you did not invite, do not open the door." "Understood, Miss Page." Maria went right up to Emily. Emily, this way, please." Emily's eyes turned red. It soon dawned on her that I would not be won over, and so she approached my parents and played dumb. "Lon, Dad, Paige is trying to get me out. You have to help me." I glanced at my parents. For a few seconds, confusion crossed their faces. But then my mother inhaled and spoke clear. "This house does not welcome you, Emily. Leave and don't come back." Emily's eyes went wide in disbelief. She never thought they'd be this cruel. "But I'm your daughter," she screamed, duller. "How can you do this to me? Wasn't you the one that cut off with we?" Mom said coldly. "When it was all going swimmingly for you, You cast a disdainful eye on us. Now that you are as low as you can go, you suddenly recall we're family. Do you take us for fools? Emily's face twisted in frustration as she clenched her fists. If it hadn't been for me self-sacrificing and marrying Ethan, my family would be bankrupt. Paige wouldn't have even gotten the opportunity to turn the company around. Mom locked eyes with her, her voice unwavering. I don't know why you agreed to marry Ethan back then, but I do know one thing. You didn't do it for us. Emily was speechless. She opened her mouth, but no excuse would come out. Maria, send her off, Mom said again, this time more final. I'm not leaving. This is my home. Emily shrieked, throwing a tantrum like a little kid. I wasn't going to waste any more time arguing. I waved to the domestic staff, and in a few moments, they picked her up and took her outside. When the door had slammed shut behind her, my mother turned to me. Paige, henceforth, no matter what Emily needs from you, don't help her. For some people, it's not worth saving. I nodded. Got it. Emily has officially burned every remaining bridge. I had initially feared our parents would cave and take her back. But now it was clear some things could not be undone. This had all been brought on by her. Maybe after being rejected by her whole family, Emily would finally learn how to be human. But I had underestimated her. Before long, she launched her own live stream channel, and with an audience of thousands, she took on the role of the pathetic victim. She was crying now, accusing us of betraying her. I gave my life for my family, she cried. I had to marry a man in a coma just to save us from bankrupting. And when Ethan did finally wake up, he was a monster. He abused me every single day, but I took it for my family, for our company. And now, here I am. After all the things I've been through, my own parents and sister have left me. They think I'm dirty. They threw me out like trash. Her live stream took off, became very popular. The minute she went live, 100,000 people watched. The internet instantly sided with her. But people were leaving hate comments on my company page. They called me heartless. They said my parents were ungrateful. That caused our company's stock prices to plummet. Even my own live stream channel was flooded with hateful messages. People accused me of being a cruel sister, a greedy corporate monster. I called Emily, but she never answered. She wasn't responding to our parents either. She was too busy riding the wave of public sympathy to sell products on her live stream. She was earning an absolute fortune. She would have been feeling quite pleased with herself. She thinks she'd found the ideal method of getting back at us. She got to cash in while also sullied our good names. A win-win. But she had not reckoned with me. I had put up with her long enough. I had first thought if she kept out of my way, I wouldn't go after her. I had thought her suffering with Ethan was punishment enough for her previous life. But some people never learn. That night, at the height of her live stream's fame, I uploaded a series of brief videos to my social media account. The first clip began with the moment our parents debated who got T.O. Mary, Ethan and Emily volunteering their bodies. The next video identified her walking around the house after being bonded, with air and arrogance, treating all with awe and respect. I put out a series of videos on my social media account. The first clip depicted the moment I had offered to marry Ethan, only for Emily to insist she would do it instead of me. The second clip caught Emily breaking up with me and our parents. The third was an audio file of Emily calling me, demanding that I come to Ethan's birthday party. And the fourth, it was a video from that same party when Ethan was busy humiliating me while Emily stood across the room watching with glee on her face. Everyone's focus had been on Ethan at the time. Emily's malicious smirk had been seamlessly there for the briefest of times. No one noticed. But I had intentionally slowed the footage down, enhancing a zoom on her face. Those videos made painfully clear the truth. Back in Emily's live stream, she played pathetic. You don't know what I went through in the Addams family, she cried. My parents always preferred my sister. They've always hated me since we were kids. I had to put on her old clothes. I had to eat the stuff that she didn't want. Then a comment popped up. Stop lying. We've all seen the truth. Emily's brows furrowed. You don't believe me? I get it. It is difficult to believe something like this is still occurring today. I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't lived it. She sniffled, attempting to maintain the act. Enough. Folks, how long are you going to keep pretending? Give us our money back. Emily's expression stiffened. If you're unable to feel compassion for those suffering, you're not invited to my live stream. Leave. Disgusting. I purchased a ton of stuff from you, and it was complete junk. I never would have had the guts to admit this before, but everything I bought from you is garbage. I had the braised chicken feet that you sold yesterday and ended up with food poisoning. I bet you it's an illegal product. Her live stream was inundated with criticism. Initially, she attempted to justify herself, but it soon became apparent that she was losing charge of the circumstance. Finally, she snapped, if you want to buy, then buy, don't. Just leave my stream. Wow, she got honest with us for a second. So this is the real her. I hope his place will be investigated into what product she sold there. There is something absolutely illegal happening here. Inspection results waiting. About 1:50 p.m., Emily's assistant finally must have realized what was happening because she desperately whispered something to Emily. Her face went deathly pale. Minutes later, she suddenly ended the live stream. Then my phone rang. I replied, already anticipating what was coming. Paige, how can you be so wicked? She screeched. You filmed all those videos with me behind my back. I let out a small laugh. Evil. No, this is called self-defense. Without my rebirth and preparation, would I have once again fallen into your trap? There was a long silence. Then Emily's voice trembled. You were reborn too? So you're just trying to get revenge on me? She muttered, her voice breaking. You set me up. You had it all calculated to make me tumble. I scoffed. I never planned anything. You made your own choices. I wouldn't have released the videos if you didn't try and frame me and our parents. You could have had a normal life. You expect me to believe that really? She spat. If I had wanted revenge, I could have aired it all back when Ethan got arrested again, I said. Emily fell silent. She had no argument left. She had done this to herself. I leaned back, speaking in a casual sing-song. If I had to guess, your next issue will be the flood of refund requests. Your suppliers signed a risky sales agreement with you, and now they're pressuring you. You're already at risk. If you fail to meet your sales target, you will be in debt. Emily was breathing a bit heavier. Oh, and one more thing, I added lightly. It is against the law to sell outlawed products. The police are going to be at your door any minute. She let out a choked gasp. I continued mercilessly. From what I gathered, you could end up for 15 years in prison if your sales revenue is more than $2 million. Emily screamed bloody murder. Paige, I'll kill you. She had lost her mind, and I believed she meant it. The following morning, while driving, I felt like I was being followed by a suspicious car. I nearly laughed out loud. Survive a whole lifetime once, and did Emily really think she could pull the same trick on me twice? I knew the importance of driving skills since I was reborn in this world, so I had been practicing driving rigorously. I always knew that a day like this could come. My face went dark as I slammed my foot on the accelerator. Emily was right behind me. As soon as she saw me speeding up, she scratched and stepped on the gas so she wouldn't fall behind. And then, just as she was starting to catch up to me, I suddenly swerved into a hard turn that barely avoided a gigantic truck. Emily, though, was not so fortunate. There was no time to hit the brakes, no time to swerve. In a terrifying moment, she collided head-on with the truck. The impact was brutal. The wreck was a total loss for her car. The front end was crumpled beyond recognition. By some cruel twist of fate, she lived, but she was paralyzed from the neck down. For the rest of her life, she would be bedridden, unable to move. When I went to see her at the hospital, she was still visibly furious, her eyes filling with helpless hatred. I was bent above her, staring down at her miserable self. I mocked, even in this life you were a fool. Have fun with your broken, miserable life, Emily. Tears filled her eyes, and then she emitted a guttural, agonized wail. I didn't know if she was crying out of regret or unadulterated resentment, but that didn't matter. I turned and walked away. I will not set foot this place again. Not even our parents went to see her. They were vacationing abroad, when I told them what happened. The only response we got was a dismissive, "She brought this on herself." What a pathetic way to live. I went outside and gazed up into the blue sky. I felt freer than I had in 2 lifetimes. Now I was finally about to enjoy the beautiful life I had been denied before.